Greetings, guten Tag, Talafalava to you all, especially my Snowgang Club congregation, SEC 1, SEC 2. This is Dr. Snow Brown speaking to you all once more. Once again, nice to catch up with all of you. Good evening, and also good morning to those that are abroad and around the globe today at this moment. First of all, I'm going to preach to you. Well, I'm going to discuss some serious issues with you today. One being, number one, we're going to talk about, that's correct, the issue of, I'll be very frank, this is a protest. This is my own personal protest as Dr. Snow Brown and as a natural pastor against the treaty document of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and also that actually supports my argument that the treaty partnership is actually harmful, and quite dangerous to non-Māoris and especially to foreigners such as myself, as I've experienced in my case in the last 25 years. Maybe not in the last 39 years that I've lived here in New Zealand, but in the last 25 years especially, among the ratbags, among the outlaws, and also especially in the form of MFP brackets KKK. So the issue is, why do I think that the people of Aotearoa, or the Maori, indigenous people of this country, do not deserve their millions and billions that they have received so far in the last over 180 years? Well, as I said before, they are the privileged group, minority, one of the minority groups, but it's actually majority in terms of Pākehā and the Māori partnership in this country. So they are a majority privileged group. They were privileged enough to sign a treaty back in the 6th of February 1840 with a foreign ruler, foreign sovereign head, Her Majesty Queen Victoria. So I'm going to give you my perspective. What do I think the signing of the treaty really means in lame terms from a perspective of a natural noble pastor such as myself, and also as Dr. Snow Brown, as a snow shepherd, and as a member of the clergy, in a more liberal way, in a more liberal terms, but under a different a foreign sovereign head, or in this case, under a foreign sovereign head, Her Majesty Queen Snow Brown, who was born here in New Zealand, in Aotearoa, New Zealand, in 2006. So I want to give you a perspective. I'm looking at it from the point of view of a new sovereign head, So a different crownship. In this terms, it's not only a meek brown baby monarch. So this is the brown monarch in the form of a baby monarch, as I refer to. It's childlike, as you can see. So the play Chief Department Queen Snow Brown that I've got here in my possession. That's right, the play that I published in June 2013, that I wrote in 2006, about October. Right, that is actually proof of my baby monarch, and also proof of my kingdom, and also the proof of my ascension to the right-hand side of Her Majesty Queen Snow Brown. So becoming, ascending to a throne, or my coronation as Dr. Snow Brown. On the right-hand side of my queen, my sovereign queen head, my sovereign queen, Queen Snow Brown. That's correct. So I'm now going to tell you exactly what it means to me, this treaty document. From my perspective as a natural pastor, and as another foreign ruler under a different sovereign head or a new crownship, a meek crown, as in Her Majesty Queen Snow Brown. The signing of the treaty was an establishment of a new nation, a new world here in the South Pacific. And that new nation was called New Zealand. So you had the United Tribes, the chiefs, the Māori chiefs at the time, that formed the United Tribes of all the iwis and hapus, that represented the iwis and hapus in Aotearoa, or in New Zealand. And they signed a treaty, an agreement, with a foreign sovereign ruler, foreign head, which was Queen Victoria. So the way I see it, on the one hand, you had the indigenous will, and then on the other hand, you had the European will. And these two wills came together to form a nation, a new nation, the birth of a new nation, the birth of new citizenship. So the establishment of citizenship as a New Zealand citizen, that's correct. And the establishment also of a new country, which is called New Zealand, that's correct. So the way I see it, if the indigenous people, when they signed that treaty, they not only established a new nation, they merged together with the foreign sovereign head or foreign ruler, Queen Victoria. But they also came together as two people, being Pākehā and Māori, to form the new nation, a new government, and also a new system under the rulership of these two. So there was an agreement that was made. Unfortunately, from my perspective, this agreement, the partnership agreement, it was never going to be equal. There was never going to be any equality. That's correct. Because there was already division among a lot of the iwis and hapus, right? Not only did their dialects, they had different dialects. They had different customs and possibly other different, disparities and differences among the iwis and hapus. So there was already division there among the indigenous group of people, except Queen Victoria. But there was no division there. But she did recognize their indigenous rights. And so in the agreement of the new country with a new name, both the English subjects, English settlers who came to the new nation or the new country, they could become officially now citizens of the new nation or the new country, which was New Zealand. And in the same thing, so there was now intermarriages. That's right. The Māori and the two worlds married each other and formed this new nation and citizenship. So basically, in lame terms, the signing of the treaty made the indigenous people citizens of England. That's correct. And made the English subjects or settlers from England the subjects or the citizens of New Zealand. That's correct. So as far as I'm concerned, the fact that the Māori people are being treated as though they've got full sovereignty and full independence, when they don't, they are under the rulership of the Crown. The Crown is the supreme ruler who makes all the laws and everything else, common laws. So the Māori people in this country are governed by the same laws, which we call common laws, and the same rights that apply across the border to every other citizen in this country. But it appears that they have taken the mickey, taken full advantage of their so-called treaty rights, protective rights, indigenous rights under the document, in saying that they're entitled to 100% of funding that the Crown or the income or whatever money that the Crown or any assets that the Crown owns, that they are entitled to it, to the full amount, when in actual fact, no, they don't. You see, they'd signed an agreement where they would give full sovereignty and full governorship to the Crown of England, that's correct, which is Queen Victoria, but with the promise that their so-called indigenous rights and their so-called indigenous governorship or rulership that was already established prior to the signing of the treaty in terms of territorial type indigenous governorship and rulership would be retained under the new government, under the new country, new nation, New Zealand, and the new crown. That's correct. But what we've got at the moment is that it appears that there's now the Māori people are so privileged that they're governing our country together with the crown, meaning there are two forms of rulership and governorship that is going on in our system. That's correct. That this country is actually being governed and being ruled by two groups of majority, and that is the Māori and the Pākehā. Unfortunately, the question is, who owns the country? Remember, this is a new nation. A new country was formed. New citizenship was born. That's correct. When the signing of the treaty took place. And I have to say, I'm sorry, but every other person that was born in New Zealand, that's correct, irrespective of whether they were originally, immigrants into this country, and also possibly, sought asylum here, but had children here in this country, I'm afraid you also now own, you're not only a part or a piece of this new nation, but you also own a portion of this new nation called New Zealand. What I'm saying is that the people of Aotearoa, they no longer own the entire country, this nation that we call New Zealand. That's correct. Because they signed the treaty, to have a foreign ruler govern their country. You see, they couldn't govern their country. Well, they needed protection, of course. And the only way that was going to happen was that they would have to cede sovereignty, full sovereignty over the country, but they would retain their indigenous rulership. And that was the agreement. Now, the idea of them saying that they were in partnership, they're in partnership with the crown in terms of, that they still retain their full sovereignty and full, full independence. They're dreaming. It's a figure of their imagination. I have to say it's fantasy. It's fantasy world that they're living in. What I'm saying is that they should just grow up. That's correct. Revoke the document, the treaty document, because they no longer need it, because they are still being governed by the crown. If they were a self-government, if their nation, or let's say if their people were gained full independence by now, over 180 years, and and had full sovereignty, well, they wouldn't need to be under the crown's rulership, let alone governorship, don't you think? They would have their own sovereign head. That is correct. But now there's 800,000 of them. Now the numbers, as I recall in history, so I've read somewhere, is that initially they started off in the signing of the treaty. The Māori people's population was 100,000, and that dwindled. It went downhill. That's correct. Quickly by the 1900s, where they lost 30 or 40,000 of their indigenous people. Now, moving forward after 180 years, well, the government, the crown has certainly have been looking after them really well, that their numbers have increased. 800,000. They actually dominate most Pacific nations. That's correct. Most citizens, they are the most, prosperous group, all the minorities, and even considering the other group, even the Pākehā. It seems like so if you say that they own the country, no, they do not own the country. They are they are just lawful occupiers. They're just like lawful occupiers, like the rest of us who are all New Zealand citizens. That's correct. The only difference is that, initially they were the first occupants. They were the first occupants of these lands. That's correct. But the establishment, of course, of the signing of the treaty and giving this land, these pieces of lands, or this nation, New Zealand, a new name, a new flag. That's great. And a flag and the merging of two worlds. Well, officially, this country became one. This country became one. That's correct. So, but at the moment, it looks like they're still living in the past, thinking, well, this country is our country, and we're entitled to whatever, what do you call it, whatever income, whatever asset that the crown has or inherits or sells in this country. Because so I guess that's the problem that we're having, is that I honestly believe that they don't deserve any of those millions and billions. That's correct. Here's how it is. They should just accept that they are just New Zealand citizens. That's correct, like everybody else. But the problem is that because of the treaty partnership, it seems like there's an obligation for every citizen in this country to speak their te reo, to speak their language. That's correct. I've never heard of any indigenous group on this planet where, in any country, where majority of people, irrespective of whether you're a citizen or not, you're being bullied. You're being bullied. They speak an indigenous language. This is not even part of your DNA, and it's not even part of your heritage. What I'm saying, that here in New Zealand, there's an obligation. It's like it's like you're just bombarded with it. You just being bullied. They forced you to speak te reo, almost every aspect of this country. And it was never that way, as I recall, back when the Māori language was prohibited from being spoken in schools or in public places. Now, look at it, moving forward, I think it's because the majority of Pākehās in this country are half caste, meaning they got part Māori heritage. That's correct. So you've got Māoris that have got Irish heritage, you've got Māoris that have got Scottish heritage, and even other European, but mostly English. So that is probably why they now, and feel the what do you call it, the attachment and the bond, that the obligation that we need to get everybody to speak te reo, because, well, we're part Māori. Well, don't force it upon us who are not Māori at all. That's correct. Because after all, and it's so weird when I think about it, all these even foreign children that are born in New Zealand, now, they don't have an ounce of Māori in their heritage, and yet they sound like little Maori kids. That's correct. They sound so weird. I mean, but it's normal. This is Kiwi culture. You got the Pākehā and the Māori, but I don't agree with it. That's correct, because people should be proud of their own heritage, and people should speak their own mother tongue without the obligation of, I should speak the Māori language first, then any other language. I don't see the Aussie, there in Aussie, ever making a law, passing a law in their government saying, if you don't speak Aborigine in this country, we're going to teach you a lesson, or we're going to discipline you for it. Or if you disrespect the Aborigines here in this country, we're going to discipline you. We're also going to teach you a lesson. And this is what has been happening here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. That's correct. Where, because the majority of the so-called Pākehās are racist and are prejudiced towards, they only accept Māori culture. And it's only because, well, they like them more because of the fact that they get free money from them as well, from their millions and billions. I wouldn't know. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. That's correct. And also because, well, supposedly the Maoris treat them better as well, and listen to them all the time and do what they tell them to do. So, but the partnership has become really, really dangerous, to the point where you've got racist Pākehās who are so possessive and controlling and even dictating, where they are now what? If anybody says anything about the Māori or the treaty or something against it or whatnot, they get really defensive and protective, to the point where they want now you to be taught a lesson by the people of Aotearoa, or vice versa. Say, by a group of punks or their lone outlaws. That's correct. Now, as far as I'm concerned, People in this country, especially the people of Māori, the people of Aotearoa, they should only be getting their entitlements, not double dipping, triple dipping, and not even, dipping 10 times, which is what is happening. Here's how I look at it. The people of Aotearoa, there's about 800,000 of them. Now, recently this year, the government gave them 750 million. That's correct, for their health, to build a new healthcare for them, or medical, whatever, and low and cheap housing, to build new cheap housing. Now, if you do the maths, let's say there's 4.8 million people, citizens of this country, and that 800,000 is Māori people. That's correct. Make up the people of Aotearoa. Let's say out of that 4.8 million citizens of New Zealand, that only 2 million people are working full-time or part-time. And let's say out of the 800,000 Māoris, that's correct, that there's only maybe 3,000, there's probably only 200,000, let's say out of, say, 300,000 that are working full-time and part-time. Majority of them are on unemployed or on the benefit. That's correct. Now, the way I see it, when you give that group of people, so if there's only, say, 300,000 Māori that are working part-time or full-time, that's correct, and the government has given them 750 million to build, they have to have their own medical centers, hospitals or whatnot, to have their own healthcare system built, established, and also low-cost housing. Can you understand where I'm coming from? That they should only be getting what they're entitled to and what they deserve, and that is, they should have only been gotten, not 750 million, goodness gracious, they should have gotten only, I don't know, if you consider there's only that small number of people, 800,000. Well, how much would you need to establish a new healthcare system for them? Well, definitely not 50 million. And probably that's correct. And I don't see the point either of them establishing a different health system for them. Goodness gracious, that just adds more work. And they become even more a handful in the system. That's correct. And more burdened. But that's just wasting fund. It's not being productive at all. When you consider there's 4.8 million of us, and we're all citizens, majority rules, that's correct. There's probably a few overstayers, but who cares? There, that's correct. At the end of the day, the Crown is wasting money. You're throwing money down the gurgler, but the people of Aotearoa are pinching and fleecing. I'm sorry. That's correct. And you're wasting a lot of the funds as well. 750 million for, to build a health system for them when there's already a health system that's established, for everybody. It just seems, I don't know, wasting, what do you think? Wasting resources and wasting extra funding? I actually think it's just wasting extra resources. Adding more work, that's correct. We should just merge, you should just accept one government, one system, that's correct. One flag, in one language, which is English, that's correct. With Māori, you can speak it if you like, if you want to. No obligation to speak Māori, that's correct. But here in New Zealand, with the partnership, it really has run away with the cow and the moon, and even the so-called sheep, that's correct. So what I'm saying here is that, I'm sorry, people of Aotearoa, this is why I do not agree with the treaty document. It has been abused and it's been misused, that's correct. Where the Pākehā is probably taking full advantage of it, where some of the Pākehās are getting paid more than they're worth, more than their value. That's correct. And it's only because they're friends with the Maoris, so I've heard, that's correct. That the Pākehā in this country, that's correct. That if you, in close bond with the Maoris, then you're likely to get more money, free money, where you're going to be paid whatever amount, whatever salary or wage that you're going to ask the Māori, or you're going to give the other party, that's correct, that you think you're worth, well, they just pay it because they've got the money. It's not a question of, you know, are we qualified enough, or are we entitled to be paid even that amount? I think it's more, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. That's correct, kind of thing. But that is a despicable, shady partnership, and I'm sorry. I don't agree, and this is no wonder we have racism and prejudice in the system, and why people like myself, nobles like myself, suffer at the hands of the majority, which is the Māori and the Pākehā in this country. But I am a Pākehā myself, but I certainly haven't been enjoying my full privileges as a noble Pākehā. And I can tell you right now, from where I'm sitting and even standing at times, I believe I deserve the millions and billions that the people of Aotearoa have been receiving. That's great, over the 180 years. Why do I say that? Well, I wear a crown now, proudly. I am part of a brand new sovereign head. I have a baby brown monarch. That's correct. Now, my monarch is not it's not founded on billions and millions like Queen Elizabeth II, or millions and billions of pounds like Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. She's always been very privileged, of course. I mean, that's the English monarch. So it's to be expected. So, and that is why who started my ministry. I mean, I thought, I didn't even know that my intellectual property, or my ministry that started around about June, the launching of my new logo there. That's correct. Bristol Kingdom Church TV by Dr. Snow Brown from Aotearoa, New Zealand. On the 26th of June 2016, would actually be a private monarch. I just assumed that it was just a ministry, and I registered as a private company. But now, looking back, I suddenly realized this is actually a brown baby monarch. That's correct. If I have a sovereign head or a sovereign queen, Her Majesty Queen Snow Brown, and this is why I'm meek, and this is why I'm a meek natural noble pastor. That's correct. So my intellectual property is brand new. That's correct. But if it's patent, it would be very, very valuable. In fact, I can guarantee you now that my baby monarch, my kingdom, at the starting price tag, and you won't believe it if I tell you, but this is what the guardian angel and archangel are telling me, that ever since we started our private ministry on Facebook from 2016, the price tag for this intellectual property, Crystal Kingdom Church TV Limited, my company, that's a private company in a kingdom, is 150 billion. That's correct. But ever since, so once it got registered, it doubled. That's correct. So right about now, as of today, which is the 14th of October, 2021, the true value of my baby brown monarch is 400 billion. That's correct. So this is more valuable than the people of Aotearoa. And this is even more valuable than the Māori king himself and his private monarch, to be honest. That's correct. Because it's also part of, that's correct. But once I file, this is what makes this also baby monarch quite valuable. Once I file that restraining order in the courts of New Zealand, it means the value goes up. It means the value now even goes up with my baby brown monarch. And it will be worth 600 billion. Now, the richest man on this planet is 200, I think it's 201 or 204 billion, or 197 billion. That's great. And that is Jeff Bezos, an American entrepreneur. That's great. The co-founder, or the founder of Amazon.com. That's great. So the value of my baby brown monarch is triple the amount, the value of his company. That's great. And in terms of Facebook, well, it looks like I'm more valuable than Facebook. That's correct. I know that it sounds very insulting and possibly arrogant to a lot of you, but you see, a monarch is very valuable. It's a very valuable asset. And you see, ever since my company was established and registered, the value went up. That's correct. The 11th of January 2018. So now I'm worth 400 billion, but after the restraining order, I'll be worth 600 billion. That's correct. That's more money than the planet can, than the richest person, let alone that the planet can have. That's right. Than anything that the planet owns. So my baby monarch is more valuable. That's correct. My company is more valuable. My kingdom is more valuable than any asset on this planet and any asset in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So you can understand now why I'm worthy. I'm worthy. I'm one citizen out of 4.8 million in New Zealand. So I'm very valuable. You couldn't afford to buy me. That's correct. But I think your stinginess has seemed to have rubbed off, and your racist and prejudice, attitude has seemed to have rubbed off because of the so-called, shady partnership, the prejudice partnership, where you're going to be begrudgingly withhold that donation that I'm entitled to. Is that your attitude? That's correct. Hey, just because I don't agree with the treaty document, and I won't apply it either, does not mean that you have got a right to withhold that donation from me, because it's an obligation now. I am owed a donation, and I rightly am owed a donation because, well, I now have a private monarch. It's called a brown monarch in the form of a baby monarch. That's correct, by the way. But it's established on Facebook, but it was born in New Zealand. Yeah, or let's just say in Aotearoa, New Zealand, but I would prefer New Zealand. So this new nation that we live in, that I've lived in the last 39 years, is actually New Zealand. But, as we know that we always respect, there's the respect of the people, the right of the indigenous people, who, the first occupants of this country, of these lands. And so, as you can see on my logo, that's correct. That's why, if I was ignorant, I wouldn't even have bothered to put Aotearoa in front of New Zealand. That's correct, because I knew that Aotearoa existed, but only inside New Zealand and not outside New Zealand. That's correct. So as you can understand now why I've been dealt to harshly here in this country, is because there is prejudice between the English, the Pākehā, and the Māori in this country, I'm afraid. And so people that are from other ethnic groups, say from other Pacific Island nations, and even Europeans, even Germans, have also been feeling the brunt here in this local township among the ratbags or the outlaws, where they have actually been dealt to, they've actually been dictated to. Yes, so I've heard similar sort of incidents that I've been dealt to. But I mean, this is where I really don't think that the people of Aotearoa deserves any more millions and any more billions. They are not the full owners. They are no longer the owners of these lands. Every citizen in this country owns a portion of this country. Meaning, if they pay taxes, then they own New Zealand as well. That's correct, is what I'm saying. Their citizenship counts for a part ownership, part portion of this country. So the people of Aotearoa, you signed away your legal rights completely to the sovereign, to the foreign ruler. So if I were you, take only your entitlements. But what you are taking is pinching and stealing. You're taking beyond your entitlements. You know what? That's enough. That's great. You've taken enough. There are people here like myself. I mean, I deserve billions by now. My income should have gone up to billions. But the fact that the people of Aotearoa, some of your people, have actually been paid money. And I mean, this is legal tender. This is not illegal tender that gives you a bad title. But the behaviors, the things that your people have been doing at this location where I live, and also in this local township, especially in the last 8 years being a tenant here, there's been a lot of dictating and a lot of stalking, a lot of criminal activities, a lot of criminal harmful activities that are actually harmful protocols. That's correct. I'm thinking, what a waste. The government did not pay, your people did not sign the treaty That's correct. So that you could, be in a pact, make a pact with a white man for you to what? To commit crimes upon other non-Māoris, and also to dictate, control other non-Māoris and deny them their full privileges. The white man did not give you that money. In fact, you didn't even know the value of currency in the form of a dollar prior to the signing of the treaty. And here they are thinking, well, we own all the money in this country that the crown has in its coffers. No, you do not own all of that money in the crown's coffers. You only, and I'll be frank and be honest, you only are entitled to what you work for. That's correct. What you put into the crown's coffers. That's correct, people of Aotearoa. So if your people, if there's only like 300,000 out of 800,000 of you that are working full-time and part-time and have got businesses and stuff that pay taxes, right, then you should only be getting that small portion, that portion, that's correct, or what you're entitled to. But you should not be claiming, 100% of the full amount of the so-called assets and resources and whatnot that the Crown has been doing a wonderful job, in fact, in the last 180 years, to accumulate, to create more wealth, Your people, I'm sorry, is one of those races, like the Aborigines, and like most of the so-called indigenous groups. And I don't want to be prejudiced and point the finger at the American Indians, but even that's great. What I'm saying is that your people here in this country, there's 800,000 of you, but the majority of your people, on the harmful level, on the outlaw level, your race, I'm sorry, terrible. It's just bad luck and bad omen. That's great. Instead of, from a Christian perspective, and even from a noble Pākehā perspective, as a national pastor, and even as a full royal perspective, if you want a good harvest, then you should be sowing good things. But I'm afraid that your people, you not only sow lawlessness, corruption, that's correct, you sow harmful protocols, you sow criminal activities, you sow crime. So as far as I'm concerned, the government is paying you money, did not pay you money, that's great, and I'm saying that is not paying you good money, legal tender, so you can convert it into crimes. So you can convert it into, into an invalid tender, like illegal tender. What I'm saying is that, that could only amount to a bad luck or a bad omen. You should be a good omen or a good luck. But your people, the fact that you're given money, so many millions and billions, and yet you convert it into what? Well, either jailbirds, that's correct, drug addictions, domestic violence, brokenness, dysfunction, that's correct, lawlessness. You seem to be doing a lot of evil things, and I can tell you right now, your race is so evil, is terrible, that's correct. On a non-Christian, unsanctified, unholy level, that's correct. One that is satanic and demonic. In all the wrong things, that's right. So can you see now why the white man has not only brainwashed you and manipulated you in thinking to interpret the word partnership in the treaty document to mean to have equal footing, 50-50 with the white man in this country? I don't think so. You're just another citizen like the rest of us. That's correct. And this is another thing that the white man here in this country ought to know. Please don't take advantage of the treaty partnership. Drop this nonsense about, if you're a Pākehā, then you got 50 what? Then you've got the 50 advantage, that you're entitled to 50%, whether it be income or the funding that the Crown is accumulating in their coffers. No, we should all be getting the same portion, same entitlements. And our race and the color of our skin and our so-called, whether we're indigenous, it shouldn't be an issue at all. But unfortunately, it is the case. There is prejudice in the system. And I do not like the way that the government is running, with the funding and stuff. Um, it's just nonsense. It's nonsense. Can you imagine now how that the Māori people were given 750 million now of that money? That's correct. To convert it into a new health system for them, and also to build new housing. And yet, what could be happening with that money is that they would have invested it during the time they're waiting for, the construction and all of this is going to take months, probably a year, and even probably 2 years before it takes off ground. They would have reinvested that money. So it would have doubled or tripled by now. So you mean they made a profit? They made a profit. They would be making 10 times more from that 750 million. And yet there's only 800,000 of them. So that's why I think that, that's really shady and despicable. How the Crown gives free money like that to a group of people where there's only a small percentage of you working part-time, full-time. And on top of that, a lot of that money is probably going to the white man, right back into the coffers of undeserving, that's correct, racist white man. Who knows? I wouldn't want to be part of that kind of sort of hidden agenda. But I mean, also the other thing that I disagree about the treaty partnership is that this issue about protocols. It's like you guys, it's like the Pākehā and the Māori in this country have got some sort of secret alliance built, a secret, code, secret language, where, I have protocols, you have protocols, and the rest of us, wow, we just get dragged into your so-called partnership protocol kind of bullshit. That's correct. Where, we have to do things this way because it's protocol. And we have to do things that way because it's protocol. And yet, when it comes to other ethnic groups and other people, we just get clumped under one umbrella, We don't have much choice. It's like a lot of the time we're completely ignored. We don't even exist. That's correct. Only when they feel like it. But it looks like this partnership, this is where it goes all wrong. The Māori people have never earned anything the right way. And neither have a lot of the racist Pākehās. I'm talking about KKK, that's correct, and MMB. They have never earned anything the right way. Now, I think it would be rude as well to say, was Her Majesty Queen Snow Brown, no, Queen Elizabeth II, ever lazy in her lifetime? And receiving free money, that's correct, from the taxpayers of England, from the citizens of England, because that's how royals and monarchs are paid. The crown of each nation, that's correct, all the people, the citizens who pay taxes towards, and they contribute a fund into the pool of fund for the crown or the government who was in charge. And some of the portion of that money would go to, say, a sovereign head, like Queen Elizabeth II, or a monarch. That's correct. Now, unfortunately, in my case, since the commencement of my so-called ministry, I haven't received any donation of any sort. I think that's the one thing that my baby monarch is missing at the moment, is funds. That's correct. Or some form, that form of blessing. But what I'm seeing is the arrogance and rudeness from both the Pākehā and the Māori in this country. And it's deafening, and it's obvious, that's correct, that there is that spitefulness and jealousy. But I really don't give a damn because, well, as I said, I'm worth more than all the money, than all your billions and your millions that you have stashed away, invested, or even spent in this country that you call Aotearoa, New Zealand. I am worth more. So there you go. So I hope I've done justice to about this discussion I've had this evening, why I think that the treaty document should be revoked, and why we should all come together and be under one government. That's correct. One citizenship, one in everything. That's correct. And then there wouldn't be any prejudice and racism in this country, and in fact will be lessened as well. And a lot of the issues that we are dealing with wouldn't be an issue. And I'm talking about injustices in this country that we're having to deal with, then maybe I wouldn't need to leave Aotearoa New Zealand or leave New Zealand altogether. If this document was revoked, because I can tell you right now that my so-called New Kingdom, my Christian Kingdom Church TV, or New Kingdom, new sovereign head, new monarch, that's correct, also represents the interest of Christianity, of all the Christians, of all the sheeps, in the form of Christian sheeps. But ever since my baby monarch started preaching and ministering on Facebook, what do you call it? Liberally, in a liberal form, that's correct. I have now converted majority of your people, majority of citizens in this country would have now been converted to snow sheeps, or snow shepherds, depending on their status, depending on their class, and also depending on, on how they've been applying themselves. So what I'm saying is that my intellectual property is that valuable that you people ought to pay donations by now. And if I ask for donations, please kindly, you have an obligation. But I mean, I don't make it an obligation for any of you. I make it as a, courtesy. It's a free choice. But at the end of the day, if the Māori King is getting free money, that's right, from the Crown's coffer, just like Queen Elizabeth II, these are monarchs, that's correct. These are royals, sovereign, heads and sovereign queens and kings. Then I should be entitled to get a portion, to get my entitlement, my portion of my entitlement of a baby monarch or of a full royal in this country. Remember, I became a full royal in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and no other nation, by the way. My monarch, my kingdom, was born in New Zealand. It was not born in Samoa, nor was it born in so-called in Germany, Deutschland. That's correct. So, it is time, New Zealand. That's correct. That you stop being prejudiced and racist. But you can accuse me, being racist and for excluding the people of Aotearoa. Well, I think I had every reason, and it's not my fault either, because that's the guardian angel's decision. And it would also be my God's decision and my queen. And I think you all know that if you look at the play, which is the manual, which is the Bible of my baby monarch and the Bible of my kingdom and ministry and everything else, you will see there is not one word of te reo. There's not one word of te reo been spoken in it. So my rules, that is part of my monarch. And that is why my rules are very valuable and my play is very valuable. That that's great. These are intellectual properties that belong to a full royal. So commoners and the rest of you should not be abusing them, nor using them, nor stealing and pinching them for free. That's correct. I am not a free commodity, nor, although you've tried to convert me into a slave and even a sex slave, I don't know, the audacity of why you people would think that. Well, I wouldn't be surprised. You see, this is why the Māori people, that's great. That's exactly what happened after the signing of the treaty. A lot of your people not only lost a lot of their heads, although they were already selling their heads, your body parts, mostly their heads, that's correct, to the white man before the signing of the treaty. But a lot of your people became sex slaves. They became sex slaves to the white man. That's correct. Now, don't you dare try and impose such a condition for me because, my immediate family, we're very, very decent and we're very godly and we're Christians. That's correct. And we prefer to be married, of course, not to be converted to a sex slave or some sort of slave. That's correct. Although thankfully a lot of my siblings, you say 6 of them, brother and 5 other sisters, have not been converted to slavery or slaves in their cases, or let alone dictated to. But it looks like at the rate we're going, I better file that restraining order because Jesus Christ, that's correct. There has been a lot of evil doubt to this noble. And I don't deserve any of it. That's correct. Just because I look indigenous, don't you assume and undermine that I don't have a brain and that I'm not white on the inside and that I couldn't be a Pākehā in your backyard with a last name like a German last name. That's correct, let alone a noble last name. and that you couldn't recognize the fact that, well, I'm a noble, by the way. And you're not. And if you can't handle it, stay out of my kingdom, eh? Right. And be good and behave yourselves. Anyway, thank you very much for your time. God bless you all. Keep you all safe and sane as well. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless. Goodbye, everyone.